Hey, what's up, guys? Alright, so it's actually been a very long time since I last talked about Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest, but I'm back with Chapter 66's review, and I felt like this was a great jumping on point for me to come back into reviewing it, just because even though not a lot happened in this chapter, since we're pretty much starting a brand new arc after the last one just ended about 3 chapters ago, this was a good point for me to jump back on into the series. Anyway, like I said, nothing really happens in this chapter to talk about. We spend the majority of the beginning half kind of just like catching up with the Edolas crew, which by the way, I'm actually kind of glad that we're back in Edolas, because Edolas was actually the first arc that after I started reading Fairy Tail that I actually got to watch or read week to week from beginning to end, because I actually just started reading Fairy Tail right before the arc prior to that ended. And then right after that, if I'm remembering right, we had a few chapters of just like kind of like one-off stories. I don't think we actually had any like big arc in between Wendy joining and us getting to the beginning of the Edolas arc, which, if I'm being honest, I would have to say that Edolas was probably in my top 5 favorite arcs from original Fairy Tail, just because of how fun it was seeing all the different versions of each character, like seeing the different version of Natsu, where he is a whiz when he's in a car or any kind of vehicle, but the second you get him on his feet, he is just a scared shitless kid, completely different from Natsu. Gray's character was seeing the change between the two of them, where Gray likes to be naked all the time, and this guy likes to have as much clothes as possible. Just the differences between each character made it a lot of fun. The story actually was really good as well. I don't want to hold Hiramashima on that. He actually did a great job with that story. And it had such a bittersweet and satisfying ending at the same time, with the fact that, Edolas lost all his magic, but at the same time, Mr. Gun got to go home finally and take his rightful place as the new king. And then, of course, obviously the tear-jerking scene where we finally got to see Lizana reunite with Earthland, Mira, and Elfman. Honestly, sitting here talking about it actually kind of make me want to go back and reread, or at the very least rewatch that arc in Fairy Tail. But yeah, like I said, nothing really happens in the beginning half of the chapter. We pretty much just have the main gang hanging out with the Edolas Guild and just joking around with them. It kind of blew my mind, the fact that Natsu and Lucy had a kid in this world and that Gray and Juvie had a kid. And the reason why it blew my mind is not because of the fact that, obviously I didn't think the ships would happen in that world. It was clear that they would. It's clear that, Fairy Tail, especially with 100 Year Quest, is definitely hitting hard with the shipping for these main characters. But I had kind of forgotten that the characters from Edolas didn't also freeze for the 7 years that the main characters did in Earthland. So it was kind of a mind blower to find out that, oh yeah, that's right, these guys are actually 7 years older now. So they're not going to be the same age anymore. And I gotta say, no one had a funnier reaction than Wendy did in the chapter seeing her Edolas counterpart. Because, I mean, we already saw what the difference was between them originally. Now that she's 7 years older, I gotta say, she looks like she's drawn, I'd have to go back and check, but it looks like she's drawn just a little bit sexier than she was before. And man, we saw how hard it hit Wendy when they first met each other. Imagine what she's thinking now. What's really funny about this chapter is the fact that we start the chapter off, I mean, we get like a little narration from from Lucy, talking about them coming back into Edolas and how, things are different from the last time they were there. And we get this moment where Edolas Lucy is giving her clothes to wear. Obviously, it's revealing clothes, kind of keeping up with her joke that, she loses her clothes all the time, and then she ends up having to wear really revealing clothes. But we get this moment where she's asking Edolas Lucy, I keep trying to say Wendy, she ends up asking Edolas Lucy, hey, how the fuck did you two get together? How did you and Natsu end up getting together and having a kid? And she tells her, well, when Natsu's in the car, he gets a little over aggressive, and one time they're in the car alone together, one thing led to another, and now they're together. And when Edolas Lucy turns things around on her and asks her what's going on with her and Natsu, Lucy just gets embarrassed and says nothing's going on. So yeah, pretty much since the beginning of Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest, we begin a lot of like nods and hints to Lucy and Natsu getting together, and obviously some kind of feelings between the two characters. And I feel like at this point we either have to see it happen or just stop referencing it. Because I mean, seriously, at this point it's the only main ship that pretty much most fans from Fairy Tail agree on that isn't canon yet. I mean, we had Elfman and Evergreen kind of already confirmed in the beginning in original Fairy Tail. We had Urza and Jalal kind of confirmed at the end of original Fairy Tail. We have Levi and Gajeel definitely confirmed by the end of Fairy Tail, and the two of them are expecting a kid in this series. We have Gray and Juvia more recently confirmed in the past few chapters in the last arc. We're just kind of still waiting on Natsu and Lucy, which obviously is going to end up happening by the end of the series. I mean, probably even by the end of this arc, since we're heavily hinting towards it, with Edolas Lucy kind of, saying, oh, the two of you would end up being good together, since, me and Edolas Natsu are. and the fact that they are meeting their alternate reality kid. So yeah, Natsu and Lucy getting together is eventually going to happen. It's just a matter of, is it going to happen anytime soon, or are we just going to be holding that off until the end of the series? Now, the only complaint I have about the beginning of the chapter is that on around page 6, there's this moment where we see Gray and Juvia's kid and Edolas looking at Natsu and Lucy's kid. And for some reason, the panel where he's looking at Natsu and Lucy's kid, the way she's drawn, I think her name's what, Nasha? Yeah, Nasha. The way Nasha's drawn in that panel where he's looking at her, it looks really bad, like really bad. Like the rest of the chapter looks great. All of Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest is looking great so far, but that one panel of Nasha just looks very bad. Like it looks very unprofessional and very fan made. Which, by the way, I also want to mention that I'm pretty sure, I don't know about Gray and Juvia's kid, because I don't think I've ever seen any fan art for what their kid will look like. But I'm pretty sure that for Natsu and Lucy, for Nasha, that the design for that character is pretty much just completely ripped off, or not ripped off, but completely inspired by the fan art for what their kid will look like. I've seen plenty of fan art for what Natsu and Lucy's kid will look like in the series, and this looks exactly like what I remember seeing for the fan art. Now, throughout most of the chapter, we have Urza being hinted to by Edolas Lucy that she should not meet her Edolas counterpart because there's something going on with her, and she won't tell her exactly what's going on. And then we end up finding out that the joke is basically, like, she's pretty much become the counterpart of what Joel was in the last arc, where she is very overprotective of Mr. Gunn, and where she's also asking him to punish her whenever she does anything that she thinks angers him. We even get the scene where her dressed in the maid outfit, she bends over in front of him, ass in his face, and tells him to spank her. I mean, I'm pretty sure we saw Joel do the exact same thing in the last arc. Although I think he was actually blindfolded and tied up at the same time. But anyway, speaking of Mr. Gunn, they end up going to visit him since no one in Fairy Tail knows why they've been brought to Edolas. They figured, alright, well, Mr. Gunn might have some ideas, so they go to the capital, meet him, walk right into his palace without any guards trying to stop them. That kind of shows how lax the security is in their country right now. And then they end up running into Sugar Boy, Hughes, and Coco, which I had completely forgotten about Coco. When I saw her, when they introduced her character during the chapter again, I completely had no idea who it was. I had to go back and research. It's like, oh, that's Coco. I forgot about her because she looks completely different. But then again, it has been a 7-year time skip. She was a kid when they were first in Edolas, so obviously she'd be a lot older now. She's a lot more mature. But they end up running into the three of them, have a quick chat, catch up, and then they go meet Mr. Gunn. They end up, running into Urza or Edolas Urza, going through the whole scene I just talked about where she's dressed up as a maid, asking him to spank her whatsoever. And then they started talking to him about the fact that they were transported there. They have no idea why they were sent there. And he's saying, well, I haven't activated Anima in a long time. I mean, we don't have any way to activate it since we don't have any magic in this world anymore. So, I mean, I don't know how to help you guys. Which, by the way, if you guys don't remember what Anima was from the original series, that was basically this kind of like gateway or this magical device that the Edolas king had, or the previous king used, to basically suck things like mana and magical items from Earthland and would bring them over to Edolas for him to use basically to restore the magic in the world since there was so little magic for everyone that was there. But at the end of the Edolas arc in the original Fairy Tail, Mr. Gunn reversed the effects of Anima, basically sending all the magic from Edolas back over to Earthland, basically depleting the entire world of its magic. So, like I said, now they have no way of activating it. Also, if I remember correctly, Anima couldn't absorb or couldn't capture people who actually use Dragon Slayer magic. So the fact that Natsu and Wendy were brought in means that they obviously weren't brought in through that means. Which, of course, as the readers, we already know that it was the White Witch who was pretending to be Toka during the last arc, who used her magic or used Toka's ability to basically move to different dimensions that brought him here by accident. Now, obviously, they don't know this because they haven't ran into her yet. She's just somewhere in the world. They haven't found her yet. But we know that as a reader, so we just know eventually at some point they're going to run into her, have like a little bit of fight because they obviously don't trust her anymore. And then eventually she's going to spill the beans as to what's going on and why she actually brought them there. And we already have to settle for that by the end of... And we already have to settle for that at the end of this chapter because, as you remember in the last chapter, or was it the chapter before that, whatever chapter it was, we know that the White Witch was trying to basically bring Natsu and his gang over into Elantir in order to save that universe. And in this chapter, by the end of it, Mr. Gunn actually mentions the fact that there is another magic world called Elantir that originally the previous king was going to use Anima to basically suck magic from that, but he found it was too dangerous to try to go to that world, so they decided to do Earthland instead. And he also reveals that the main reason why they didn't go with Elantir is because of the fact that there was someone in Elantir who had greater dimensional traveling magic than Anima, so they were afraid of what that person would do if they actually stole mana from that world. And we end up finding out that that person is actually Selene, the moon dragon god, which we already know was working with or actually using the White Witch to achieve some kind of goal in the last arc. I don't know if it was actually to kill the previous dragon god that they fought, the wood dragon god, I forget what his name is, or if it was some other kind of scheme that we just aren't aware of just yet. But yeah, that's pretty much where the chapter ends, with Misty Gun revealing the fact that he's aware of Selena, the moon dragon god, which is obviously one of the god dragons that Natsu and them have been hired to kill off or seal off. Anyway, I guess if we're setting up with Selena being the next main villain, I don't know if she actually will end up being the main villain for this next arc, or if we're actually going to be holding her off, because it seems like she's planning something that seems more endgame. And even though I'm pretty sure that the Fire Dragon God, who's basically Natsu's brother, is going to end up being the final villain for the series, just because it kind of seems like he's being set up to be the Acnologia of the sequel series. But at the same time, in my opinion, it kind of feels like Selene's going to end up filling the Zeref role for the series, where she's being hinted at or she's being mentioned earlier on, and then, you know, we're just going to keep hinting at her and mentioning her as the series goes on until we eventually end up getting into this big conflict with her. Which, by the time we end up getting to that conflict, I think by then, the entire Fairy Tail Guild in Earthland will know about the 100-year quest. And I feel like that this was a good idea, the fact that they're over in Edolas now, as to how not to explain to the rest of the guild exactly what's going on with the quest, because now that they've been directly involved, thanks to the White Witch, they have every right to basically ask them, hey, what's going on? And even though they were sworn to secrecy, not telling them, with everything that's going on now, it's kind of become too big for them to keep it a secret. But by sending them over to Edolas, it basically avoids the guild being able to basically ask them any real questions or kind of hard press them for answers. And by the time they actually come back, I have a feeling that Toka, the actual Toka cat, will fill them in on exactly what's going on if she wasn't also transported to Edolas or some other place. But that's it for the review, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to be starting Eden Zero again with the next chapter, so look forward to that review. And as long as I manage to catch up before next month's chapter comes out, I am also going to try to go back to reviewing Attack on Titan each month before the series ends. So, like I said, hopefully I can catch up before the next chapter comes out. Wish me luck, but anyway, that's it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.